Hey everybody, this is Curtis from PSNStores.com. Today we're going to take a look at Metrico Plus. This is out on PlayStation 4. It came out 1 to 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before. But it is here and it is available now. So this is a remake. We'll call it a remake of Metrico, which came out on the Vita 2 years ago. Actually, it's kind of hard to believe it's been 2 years. This is a game that Eric reviewed on the Vita and really enjoyed. He gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And I think it might have been a Plus game on Vita. I'm pretty sure it came out on Plus like when it released or around that time. But now it is here on PlayStation 4, and it's reworked for PS4. We'll say that. So it's not, the Vita version there were certain puzzles and different elements that you would need to use some of the Vita functionality that is unique to the Vita, like touchscreen stuff and like tilt and things like that, that were used in some of the puzzles. And so on this version, some of that has been altered or changed a little bit. Just going from memory, from just when I played it all the way through on Vita 2 years ago, the only differences really that I can see as far as gameplay stuff is just that I'm playing it with a controller and I'm not too concerned with like touchscreen mechanics or anything like that. But as far as everything else, I imagine there are probably some puzzles that are reworked a little bit just to work better on PS4. That seems to be what the goal was. I think maybe the last world might be a bit different, just to better suit the PlayStation 4 controller. But other than that, it's pretty much the same game. It's just a remake. It's maybe a better looking version, being on PS4. But we're gonna jump into, I guess, World 2. We'll just go from the beginning. So this way, if you never played Metrico on Vita, if you didn't have a Vita and you didn't really know what Metrico was, this would be a good way to kind of get in. It's a really interesting, it's a pretty cool puzzle game. I think Eric likes it more than I do. I think it's very like novel in its concept. Especially visually, you don't really see many games like this or that look like it. Because this game is like bar graphs and infographics and that kind of thing. Like the concept of this game visually was, and I guess gameplay wise, was to make a puzzle game that I guess looked like a bunch of bar graphs and like infographics and things like that. And that's like really interesting, and it makes for some pretty clever puzzles, as you'll see in this video. So in level 2, they give you kind of a restart just in case maybe you screwed up a puzzle and you have to like redo from the beginning. So we can hit circle to do that. And sometimes you actually have to restart. Sometimes by respawning, you get stuff like this, where every respawn affects things in the world. And by doing so, we've now made ourselves some steps so that we can get up and continue onto the next area. And oh look, we fell. So now we can respawn up there. And so again, like it's an interesting, typically like in games, if you've got a checkpoint, it's like, yeah, if you die, you go back to the checkpoint. In this game, it's a little bit different. In this game, it's like, yeah, if you need to respawn for any given reason, maybe that will impact the puzzle. So as you see here, one of the things that it does is like, sometimes there's a puzzle where it like shows a bar. In this instance, it's just showing percentage, but it might show like, oh yeah, your position on the X and Y axis or something will impact where this bar is moving or where this circle is being filled, or any number of things. Like if you just think in pie graphs and line charts and that kind of stuff, you start to see where the inspiration is coming from. So in this instance, by running and just moving, we're shrinking this bar. And then if we jump, we can see that this is decreasing. It gives us, I guess, 7 jumps really. But we're gonna restart because I think what we need to do just get this far enough. There we go. So another interesting thing is like that collectible there, I don't believe it shows up on your first time through a level. I could be wrong, but that seems to be the case because why wouldn't I have gotten that collectible before? And I seem to remember that being a thing. So this is kind of interesting. It kind of, depending on where you're jumping, impacts the other things, so you've got to be kind of careful to ensure that you can jump up and that you don't get stuck. There we go. So I don't know what that part's like. I don't know, maybe there's a secret or something there that I don't really know about. As far as like that line moving to the platforms that you land on, I'm not too sure. So this one, as you've noticed, like if I'm running along the ground, that second bar is moving forward. Like this, rapidly. But if I jump, you can kind of stop it from moving upwards. The catch is we've got to get there fast enough so that we can still get across. There we go. So there is timing involved in certain instances. Sometimes you've got to be like you've got to do things fast, sometimes. But most of it is very much reliant on, so we did that wrong. Very much reliant on your position and like the number of times you've been jumping, or if you're even like your movement will impact different things. Okay. So I think actually this one might be we can't jump. And so we've got to kind of keep moving around. And then we can jump. And we're good. And this is another instance of like using these kind of I hesitate to even call them respawn points. They're a bit different than what you'd expect normally. Just another example of using them to kind of reset the position of things. But because we're doing them in a different location, it allows us to get over these cylinders here to continue moving forward. And so in some ways, at least for me personally, this was a game that, again, I think Eric enjoyed it a lot more than I did. Just because I felt like it maybe overstayed its welcome a little bit with the Vita specific stuff. Like I found myself, I think after a while, I just kind of didn't really feel like doing, touchscreen puzzles and stuff, at least for this game. I seem to remember there being a mechanic in the World 6. I don't remember specifically what it was, but I seem to remember there being something late game that was frustrating with the Vita, at least for me. And so in some ways, I kind of like this a little better, just because I could just play with a controller, and I'm fine. But that is obviously something that's very much kind of to each their own. So you see here, the interesting thing is only certain parts of this puzzle are affected by the restart. So it's a really like interesting and pretty clever use of this concept of like creating a game that visually just looks like a bunch of bar graphs and infographics and any number of things of that kind of sort. And so taking that concept and making a really interesting puzzle game that actually plays with that, and it makes sense of like using these things to in real time map out player positioning and how that impacts the graph if you will. And so, like, you know, seeing that in action is interesting, and they're able to build off this pretty well throughout the game, introducing different mechanics, just making puzzles progressively harder as you progress. There is like a story here. Even when I played the Vita version, I didn't really understand what was going on. It's very abstract. Every level ends the same way, and it kind of builds off that, and it's weird. It's weird. But the game itself is super cool, and it being on PS4 now, I'm sure opens up to many, many more players who maybe didn't get to play this game on the Vita. So even though there's not necessarily, if you did play it before, there isn't necessarily anything major here that is new, you know, that maybe you didn't see on the Vita version. But it is, it's still a really cool puzzle game. Again, you can check out Eric's original review for the Vita version on our site. Again, he gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. He really, really liked it. I like it quite a bit, maybe not as much as him. But it's just a really clever and interesting puzzle game, and again, just, you know, visually and what they're able to do with this concept for their puzzle design is really interesting. It's very clever, and it's not necessarily something you've seen before, or that I've seen before. So that is Metrico Plus. It is out now on PlayStation 4. I believe somewhere between 10 and 15. I don't remember the exact price on it. I don't know if it's cross-buy or not, actually. That's something I'll post it in the show notes if it is or not, because I forgot to look that up beforehand. I'm not sure if that's the case. I guess you would kind of hope it would be. But anyways, thank you for watching, as always, and I will see you next time.